We're going to be working with around advice. In the previous videos linked in the playlist that's below that like button, we covered before and after advice. Now we're going to be looking at the around device. So this is what happens around a specific joint point. Remember, before happens before joint points, afters happen after, arounds happened all around it, before and after. It's pretty cool. We will be using the myOrder.displayOrder items, which we have at the main class right here. This myOrder.displayOrder items. We'll get back to what this commented out part means in a second, but this is going to be our joint right here, where everything kind of comes around. So to implement this, let's go into our XML file where all of our beans are located. We have gotten rid of the before, we can see it's not inside of here anymore, and we've replaced it with this around right here, leaving the after so that we can see this. We're going to demonstrate how this around, it's always going to print out before and after, even if there's an exception. However, the after will not do that specifically. It's only going to print out if everything is okay. So we're in our XML, we've gotten rid of the before, we're leaving the after so that instead of printing before, the logo gets printed around the call instead. Remember that our before used to look like this. And it's very, very similar. We're just having this as around. It's going to be around the same thing, and we want to print the logo. So we're really just changing from around to before, or from before to around. So this around means that our logo will get printed before and after a joint. When using it around, we have to define it a little bit differently, so that's what we have done so far. Inside of our aspect config, it no longer takes a joint point as argument, but instead a preceding joint point. So we're going to go look at our aspect config right here. In our aspect config, we have this if statement. I'm going to just uncomment it. We're going to come to this joint point later, and this is just for the next part of the video. So inside of here, I've commented all of this out, and I have edited it so it has a preceding joint point inside of it, joint point. Because we're no longer going to be taking a joint point, we can't do that. It has to be a preceding joint point. So again, not a joint point, but a preceding joint point. That's very important. And then it's going to throw a throwable right here. This is just because of our joint point dot proceed right here. First, we're going to print our logo, always. There's no change here. So this is kind of like the before right here. After this, we decide if it's actually going to run or not. So we're going to do a check. And this is the great part of an around. We retrieve the order bean, then we use it to check if the map is empty. So we can see inside of here we have this if, we have our order because we're making a new order, we have order.getOrderItems, and this is for our map. If it's empty, then we are going to skip this and go to our else and say that our order cart is empty. Now, if it's not, we are going to print our logo. So that's how it's going to work, and then we're always going to print out the number of items in our cart, and then we get the size of the number of items in our cart. So it's pretty simple, but there is a lot here. So we can see if this allows us to run or not. Let's go to our main. We're just going to run this. After running this, we're going to get this right here. So we have our display order of items. We know that this is going to get printed out first. We are going to have our order, then after this is just calling our display order items. And display order of items, I believe it is in order. It's right here. So all of this is going to get printed and displayed right here. And then we have our logo that's printed afterwards. And that's because in our aspect config, we're calling our print logo. And this if statement, since it's not empty, it's going to be inside of here. It's going to print that. And then it's going to print the number of items in our order. It's going to get our order. And then it's going to print our order total right here. Remember, this is because when we call our aspect config right here, we have our aspect config that's being put inside of here. We have our bean that's grabbing this right here. So we're going to run through all of this. This is down here. We have this private get order where we're going to get this, and then we're going to print it like this. So that's how that would work. Remember, all of our beans are inside of here where we defined our items. So we can now see that an around allows us to determine if a joint point should be executed or not. This is when we have items in our order of items. So what if we want to clear this? And then we're going to get our items here, and then we're going to clear it. So if we get our items here and then we clear it, we're going to have nothing inside of here. Now let's look at the after around device. We can prove that this will still run even if we throw an exception. So it will work like a finally block, whereas a regular advice does not print. So our regular advice would not print, but our around would. So to configure this, we're not going into our XML. I believe we're going to go into our aspect, and inside of here we can get rid of this if else, and we're going to immediately go to our join point dot proceed, so we can get rid of our condition right here and always proceed. And we're always going to proceed here because in our order we're going to be changing, and this is just going to go right into our join point proceed right here. And this is going to work, still going to do its thing, because if we go into our order right here before we display right here, we're going to have this check. This, if our ordered items is empty, we're going to throw this new illegal argument exception. But we should still run this even though it has that, because it acts like the final statement. So in our aspect configuration, we've configured instead of our print logo, we're removing our check, and then it's going to run in our order. So if we run this again, we can see what we get. We should have some printing and then some error. So we see our logo has printed beforehand. We're not going to print our logo inside because we've removed it from our if statement right here. We don't need to print it again. And so we should only just be printing our order total, right? It's going to just proceed past this. We're not going to print out the number of items in our cart. We're just going to proceed. So we get the order, and then we print out the order value right here. And then we're going to throw this error because it is empty. So that's how we look at working with the around advice. In the next video, playlist link below the like button, we're going to be using after throwing and after returning advices.